Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Wendy Sellers, the HR lady. I am so excited to be here today. First of all, I'm coming off of being sick with COVID of all things, which I did not know until I was almost out of it. So for anybody who listens to other shows, that was what was going on with my voice. But with that said, today I want to talk about mental health and not just physical health. We have with us today Michelle E. Dickinson, who is a renowned figure in mental health innovation, a burnout interventionist. Oh boy, I need you. Author and a consultant, to name a few. Welcome. Thank you for your time today, Michelle.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hey, tell our listeners about yourself and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. I started my career as a secretary that couldn't type in the pharmaceutical industry, and worked my way up to a director at my last company before leaving and starting my own private practice. So I spent 19 years in the big pharma space, starting as a secretary, moving to director in the regulatory space and medical education space. I loved it. I loved the people I got to work with, but I always wanted to do something more. So when typically in the pharmaceutical world, when you get reorganized, let's just say, and you get displaced, you have an opportunity. So I took that and I started my own company right before COVID, and have been helping people ever since with resilience as a lifestyle and de-escalation training and coaching.
I love it. And where are you located out of?
I'm in New Jersey.
Okay. All right. We're on the East Coast here. I'm in Florida. JC, my co-host here, is in upstate New York. Hey, JC.
How you doing, Wendy? Michelle, it's good to see you.
Yeah, I'm doing better now. I feel like I'm at the top of the world coming out of an illness there. It definitely makes you, look at things in a different aspect. But I want to talk a little bit more about, workplace resilience and burnout intervention. When you and I reconnected, I was like, oh my goodness, I feel like everybody just is at least claiming that they're burned out. I know I'm feeling it, and I'm very much looking forward to my vacation coming up so I can maybe, grab that burnout and shove it away for about a week. So you work across diverse industries, helping companies build resilient, mentally healthy culture. So I have two questions. What does that mean? What does it mean to have a mentally healthy culture? And then on top of that, for those HR leaders or C-suite who are trying to reduce burnout and increase engagement, where the heck should they begin? So what does it mean to have a mentally healthy culture?
I think it starts with your leadership. Personally, I think your leaders need to really be demonstrating what it looks like to be a regulated leader. I mean, that's something that I've witnessed. Oftentimes we have these leaders that are just trying to do the very best they can, and they don't realize the ripple effect that they cause not being regulated and demonstrating what it looks like to grind it out instead of foster better practices for themselves. So I will say the average person that comes to me is waiting for their external circumstances to be different or for the vacation to come to take better care of themselves. And I believe that we can weave resilience as a lifestyle into the fabric of a company, and that our leaders have the ability to normalize that.
Only 35% of employees say their workplace supports their mental health effectively, despite 81% of workers saying that they will prioritize mental health in future job searches. Back to you.
Yeah, that's a pretty low, sad number there. 35% of employees say their workplace actually supports their mental health. And interesting. I started out by saying, I can't wait for my vacation so that I can, take a break. I think there's a lot going on just in our world too. We have social media coming at us all the time, not always positive. And it definitely does take an effect on, a negative effect on the workplace and the employer and the employee. What mistakes do you most often see when leaders, whether they're in HR or not, when they're saying, we have burnt out employees and we're gonna try to make changes? What are the mistakes that you often see?
Yeah, I think, I love the intention behind a mental health day. I love the intention behind a yoga day or bringing in a chair masseuse. I think those are very well intended, but they're not what's going to shift things, and so I think that one of the common mistakes is relying on these perks to create a temporary relief. Most people, if you ask them, create better work-life balance, do more for you, they honestly don't know what that even means. Like, what does that mean? Does it mean I take a vacation? Does it mean, what does it mean? Like, they need help. They need strategies. They need tools. And then going back to what I said about the leaders, it's telling without teaching. That's another mistake, right? Like, they can tell you all day long, you need to take that summer Friday, but yet they're there grinding it out until 6 p.m. and you're getting emails from them. So I think we have to have leaders that are courageous enough to talk about how they fill their cup and create that silent approval to their people to take what they need to recharge themselves. Otherwise, they'll feel obligated.
Yeah, it's 100% true. I mean, and I think you're right. Like we're throwing Band-Aids at it, right? We're throwing Band-Aids at a solution. And at the moment, yeah, I want a Band-Aid, but I want a permanent fix moving forward and making sure that I have, healthy cultures. I was just talking about this with somebody else. There used to be that big thing, and there still is in the summertime of, 4-day work week. We're going to go through the summer and have a 4-day work week. Well, if you have to physically go into the office, that's actually more stressful sometimes, because it ends up being like a 12 to 14 hour day with the drive and the extended days. And then the Friday or the Monday that you're off, you're so exhausted and burnt out to do anything. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And I say this all the time with the people that I get to coach, right? Lasting resilience and engagement really comes from empowering people to shift their mindset and build better, healthy habits. Okay. And not wait for them to feel like they can do it. You have a choice every day on how you start your day, what you make a priority, how you look at adversity and stress, what you do to mitigate stress in your life. And I think most people forget how much agency they have, and they're waiting for this perfect scenario in order for them to take better care of themselves. So we come from it looking at how you think and what you do. Those two things you have 100% control over.
Yeah, and it's about having, resilience, not only in your own life, but as managers need to be modeling this resilient behaviors too. And JC, I think you have some statistics on that.
Managers who model resilient behaviors such as self-care, flexibility, and boundary setting, they are 4.4 times more likely to have teams that report high resilience and well-being.
What are your thoughts on that, Michelle? I mean, I think it makes sense, right? You model what you see.
Absolutely. It signals to the staff that self-care is accepted and encouraged in the organization. I have a great example of a gentleman I just recently executive coached, and he actually said to me, when I started coaching with you, I was running way too fast. I was making reactive decisions. I was letting stress dictate my leadership style. You can imagine the ripple effect that was having on his people. That's why their HR person found me. They said, you really need to help this guy. The moment we started to talk to him about his self-regulation, and we started to talk to him about why he needs to do stuff for him outside of the grind, he started to get his footing back and started to show up the leader he wanted to show up, right? And so that is so important because he then can set that stage for his people, right?
Right.
So
I love it. Hey, speaking of, self-care, tell us a little bit about the Hyrox champion. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes. Oh, I love it. Oh my God. Hyrox has become my addiction. I love it. So I just did my 5th one in New York City, Pier 76 with my girlfriend. I did a female doubles competition. It's just so much fun. It's a non-negotiable for me to train for that fitness competition. It's the access to overcome my life. If I can overcome a really challenging workout in the gym, it literally sets me up to be able to overcome whatever comes at me in my day. So I love it.
So I did a little research because I have no clue what this is. I've never heard of it, but the Hyrox is it's a very specific fitness race, right?
Yeah.
That follows a set format. 8 workout stations, each followed by a set running distance. These workouts include rowing, sled pushing, burpees, skiing. Whoa, that's a lot. And you're the champion. Yay!
I don't know if I'm a champion, but I am pretty proud that I have completed 5 of them and I keep getting better. So
yeah, that makes you a champion in our mind. That's for sure. With the fact, but again, this comes right back into, you taking care of yourself, not just physically, but mentally. And when you take care of yourself mentally, you can take care of yourself physically. When we bring it back to the workplace, we as leaders, and I just use that term broadly, no matter what your title is, anybody can be a leader, but leading where people are watching you saying, oh, well, they're taking their time off to go work out, or they're taking an hour out to go for a walk on their lunch break. That means I'm allowed to do that too. I really don't think so many managers realize how many people are looking at them and watching what they're doing and knowing, and not even an official manager, just anybody who has leadership capability. So it's very important for that. But thank you for explaining the Hyrox, and congratulations on that. Many HR teams specifically struggle with executive buy-in when it comes to mental health initiatives. A lot of executives are like, stay away from that. I don't want anything to do with it. What's your approach to shifting the leadership mindset, especially with those who are resistant to change around the topic of mental health?
So I think it's less about selling a mental health initiative. I think it's more about redefining what it means to lead well, right? What does it mean to lead people well? It's no longer, I think, like the separation of mental health and work. I think when leaders really start to see that resilience and self-care are central to their effectiveness, and they're able to model those behaviors every day, it's really going to create and pave the road for a healthy culture where everyone can just truly navigate the stress that's inevitable, and they can do it well together. I don't think it's an initiative. I think we need to move away and create better fundamental cultures, having that as an integrated part of it.
Yeah, JC.
Real quick question here. How do you differentiate while you're trying to move the needle from A to B, and we're bringing people on board with the different thought processes, and we're influencing and or enacting that change ourselves, depending on where we're seated, right? How do you handle situations where overall leadership or the board or whoever says that they do support the well-being, but their actions might lack a little bit of the follow-through, and you're in that situation of having to address culture and accountability at the same time?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think I'm a big fan of gamifying things. I mean, I think that's why I love our de-escalation training, because I feel like if I could give you Jedi mind tricks and tactics to help you stay regulated and deregulate and help navigate someone who's coming at you in a deregulated way, you feel like you've gotten a superpower, and in the process, you're learning what you need to do to stay regulated in that moment, right? Like the first thing I teach with de-escalation training is you have to be fully regulated. Two deregulated people cannot have a constructive discussion. So where you have agency is you're completely regulated yourself because you've gotten the 8 hours of sleep, you've stepped away and done the thing you need to do. And then you can come at it, and you can then start to use your Jedi mind tricks and your tools in your toolbox to control the situation and calm the person down. That's kind of how I think people need to look at these things. It's not such a big thing. It's like, let's just give people some tools to show up the best version of themselves and be more effective leaders, right? And so how do we do that? Maybe we gamify it. Maybe it is about, oh, have you tried the late night DJ voice that will calm your nervous system and their nervous system?
I love it. I love it. Hey, employees who feel their leadership cares about their well-being, they're 69% less likely to actively search for a new job. There's something in this.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, we know how expensive it is to recruit and retain employees. And so, if we can get our employees to not even be looking for a new job, doesn't mean they're not going to find one because we're, a good recruiter, like my recruiter will go after people. But we want to make sure that we realize, when we're talking to leaders to say things like that and use metrics and use statistics. So, my question for you, Michelle, Michelle E. Dickinson, is that how do you differentiate if you do have leaders that you feel like, yeah, like JC said, they said, yeah, I'm in it, but they're kind of looking the other way. How do you differentiate between, like just indifference, passive resistance, or actual opposition, the active resistance of saying, I don't want to be involved with our employees' mental health? And does that even change your approach at all?
I think what we have to remember is, yes, while I think it's important, and I will always say it's important to have leaders that are guiding the culture of the company, anyone can lead from any level in their company, right? So,
agree.
I think the conversations around what people are doing for themselves can happen at any level and can influence people above. I mean, some of the greatest experiences I ever had was having the ability to influence people that were higher in the food chain than I was. And I think that there's power there. So I wouldn't necessarily create more resistance. I would probably increase the number of people that were starting to maybe verbalize what they're doing for themselves so that they can show up a better version of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, when I'm dealing with anybody that's resistant to an idea, like find out why are they resistant to it. It could just be that they have the leaders, whoever that might be, just has no idea what you're talking about. They may have mental health care concerns themselves and say, I don't want to be involved in this because I don't want anybody to know that I have mental health care issues. I mean, geez, in 2025, you would think this would be something that we would just rip the Band-Aid off and start talking about, but it's not. Though I'm okay with talking about mental health, including my own, other people may not be. They may find that it's shameful. And so we may have to educate those executives to say, we're not going to talk about the specifics of, Wendy's mental health or Michelle's mental health, but we are going to talk about the fact that us asking people to work overtime all the time, unplanned, is a stressor and could contribute to burnout. And then on top of that, burnout costs our health insurance XYZ, and it costs turnover, and recruiting is expensive. So often, I just show them the money.
Yeah. And stress and energy are great barometers, right? Like if people are chronically stressed and they have low energy, like they have responsibility over that, but then so does the organization. If that's like the complaint in like an engagement survey, I used to run the Credo survey at Johnson & Johnson for my division. And you would see what people would say that they were overwhelmed or stressed or whatever, right? You'd have to actually take some action on that. But if that's a chronic complaint, like then it's not about mental health. It's about what are we doing to inflict stress, right? Like let's not then take the words mental health away and start thinking about it as a stressor. Like, are we adding unnecessary stress? What could we help them with as well, to reduce stress?
Yeah, exactly. And then again, show them the money. Hey, if we reduce stress, maybe we'll reduce workers' comp issues or, other issues that are affecting our healthcare costs. And again, recruiting and turnover, because there are a ton of websites out there that anybody can go to and write negative reviews about your company if you were a stressful place to work. And there's not a heck of a lot you can do about that. And that's, that's part of the cultural change that we're looking for. But speaking of cultural change, so, I know that you've helped many organizations make practices like meditation, de-escalation, and identity shifting part of their norm. How do you turn these from like a one-off conversation or maybe a webinar or a workshop into lasting cultural change so that these companies, their HR department, their management, they are, looking out for their employees and de-escalating situations and making sure that people feel safe there?
Yeah, I always go back to it's one thing to do a webinar, right? Like I think the thing that I'm most proud of is anyone that comes to me for coaching, my business partner says this all the time. I can't believe you got that person to meditate. But it's the hand holding, right? Because like when I'm coaching them for a definitive number of sessions, right? So they're getting that accountability week to week. But if you do a program and you introduce them to meditation, it needs to become a norm in the conversation after that, because we all know what it's like to go to a one-off workshop, right? The magic is going to be in the follow through, in the practice, in the language that continues long after that program. And if leaders are starting to talk about, I did this meditation, it really does continue to weave that into the practices of the culture that can make the difference. But again, I would, if I had it my way, I would want every people leader to go through some type of a deep dive into de-escalation and resilience, because if they were fully regulated and had these practices and realized how they felt, how differently they could feel, they would have no problem talking about it. But if they don't buy into it, they're not going to continue the conversation. They're going to be like, oh, remember that 10 minutes in the workshop? That was such a waste of time. Versus, you know what? I did it for 5 days in a row, and what a difference it's made for my life, right? That's genuine, and that's what we want.
Organizations with sustained well-being programs, they're 2.5 times more likely to be viewed as a great workplace to work by their employees. Back to you.
Yeah, and that was from a Deloitte study, and that it's just so important. Well-being isn't just about, did I gain or lose 5 pounds, right? It's about the mental part. And, we as society, I think half of society, probably more, still judges that, like, oh, get your act together. Or as my book says, suck it up, Buttercup. Well, yes. I say that to say, suck it up, Buttercup, but be a leader people want to willingly follow, which means don't tell them to suck it up when they're having a nervous breakdown or a burnout, or just saying, I need a day off, or I'm stressed, or can I move this project deadline, because it's not going to happen. It's just so important. I have another question kind of related to like the meditation and the de-escalation. What systems or rituals have you seen work best to keep practices alive after that one-off workshop, especially when they're in fast-paced environments where habits tend to collapse under stress, and so do standard operating procedures?
They forego it. They're like, I don't have time for that. But no, that saying, right? If you don't have 5 minutes to meditate, you should meditate an hour, right? That's a popular saying. But it's true, right? It's true. It's about the preservation. So it's like most of the folks that I get to work with are realizing, if I just so some of the hacks that I teach, let me just share this. Some of the hacks that I teach, most based on what has been so effective for the people I've gotten to support, is like having a morning routine, doing something for yourself. It's so basic, and it doesn't have to take an hour-long ritual. It could take 15 minutes, right? It's filling your cup. It's making that a non-negotiable. But so many of us are like, but I got pulled right into email. Only you can change that. Only you can create that boundary, right? So that's like super important. So having those non-negotiables that are going to fill your cup are key. And I think we have to remind people that that's like essential. You cannot put the oxygen mask on anyone until you do it for yourself, right? Like, and don't forego that, because it's a slippery slope. The moment you stop taking care of yourself, you're going to go right back. But that's why I also always measure for them, and I get them to constantly measure their level of energy and their level of stress. So if their level of energy is low and their stress is high, then they have to do something different. Like, it's a wake-up call. You have to start to think about, what could I be doing differently?
So number one is to plan your day and then stick to that plan.
Yeah. Or just give yourself a few minutes in the morning to fill your cup. Like, maybe it's sit in your favorite chair and have a cup of coffee. It doesn't have to be rocket science. It just means like you're signaling, like, I'm in control of this day. I'm not just going to be at the effects of all these fires coming at me, because the fires are going to come, So.
From the workplace flexibility perspective, we've seen so many change this past year or so. Less people working remotely, less people working at home, less people having flexibility in the actual office. Now, I don't know about you, but back in my day, Grandpa always laid it out there. If you're 15 minutes early, you're 15 minutes late. So you're there a half hour early, right? So by the end of the day, you now have all these employees that want to make sure that they're on time, that they're making those good impressions, and you're getting extra work out of them now because you have them constrained to a very rigid 9 to 5, but they're showing up at 8:30, and you know that they might be working through lunch. Is there a factor of consideration there, Michelle E. Dickinson, when we think about the respect for the employee and the professionalism end of things to say, let's ease off the gas a little bit midday. You know what? Take that longer lunch, or, we're going to call this day a little bit early. I saw you here at the start.
I always focus on the impact, right? I try to get people to think about the impact. What is the impact on you? If you're not taking that time for you, are you really, think about it. At the end of the day, are you really as sharp? Are you really as effective as you can be? Or is it beneficial for you to step away and go and take the longer lunch to clear your head, And are you going to go home and kick the dog and be mean to your partner because so always get the impact on how sharp you are and on the people around you, and take a pause and say, do I need to be doing something a little bit differently so I get to show up for the people that I love, who love me, and that I'm clearing my head so that I don't look at this document and read it 10 times because I'm not mentally clear, we've all been there, right? Like, I'm worth nothing at a certain time. Like, forget it. I'd rather come back tomorrow fresh, recharged, clear head, be able to tackle it in the amount of time it should take.
Yeah, I agree. I have a follow-up question as well, kind of on the same topic there. What's one thing that you've seen that a resource-strapped company do that actually works? A company that needed to change the culture, the behavior of their employees, but they didn't have an HR department. They didn't even have benefits. They didn't have a big budget. I'll go first with, you've kind of just, copying off of what you just talked about, lunch, and what JC just talked about. If people are working in person and they have to drive through a city and they choose to come to work an hour early because of traffic, well, then build more time during the day, make their lunch break 2 hours. They're still doing the same amount of time. They're just get there early and late because of traffic, not because they're obsessed with work. Any other ideas that you might have for our listeners who may not have a big budget that they can help their employees, with burnout specifically?
Invest in your leader. If you have one leader that is this guy that I was supporting was responsible for a massive sales team. His impact was so important. They had to do something because it was affecting so many people, and they couldn't invest in everybody. Invest in that person or those people that have the greatest impact on their team, because if you can get them leading from a place of compassion and empathy and demonstrating, strong leadership, that's going to pay back. So focus on those that have the biggest influence or impact.
Yeah. And folks, you're fortunate to be in the right place at Aurora Training Advantage. We have a lot of webinars on how to be a manager, how to be a leader. And so I want you to also remember that it's not just about it is about the compassion and the empathy. We still need the managers to hold people accountable, but they don't need to be a jerk about it, right? They can say, hey, let's come up with our SMART goals together. Let's come up with our deadlines together, getting the employee involved instead of somebody just shoving down projects at them and realizing, oh, this is not possible. I see it all the time. I see insane project deadlines and I'm like, where did you come up with this deadline or this timeline? They're like, I don't know. I just kind of picked it out of the sky. I'm like, clearly. And your employees know that too. And that's why they're upset right now, because that's never going to work. So it's as easy, I say easy, but it's really not, just, communicating with your employee. So if you are HR on here today or an executive and you're saying, you know what? My managers still do need a little bit more training. Check out some of the trainings we have for Aurora Training Advantage and, start putting that to good use. JC, any final words here?
Yeah, I've got one last question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
When you think mental health in the bigger picture of a company, do you think that mental health will eventually become a mandatory part of ESG reporting or board level oversight someday? And where do you see the future of this going, Michelle E. Dickinson?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, you look at the generations that are coming into the workplace and what they're requesting. What are their requests? Not the same requests I had when I started working. So I feel like it's based on the generation's wants and needs. And in order to keep people talent in the seat, you're going to need to be listening to what their wants and needs are. And many of them are asking for mental health consciousness, mental health awareness, open dialogue, right? Not any of the stuff that we dealt with stigma. So I think it's going to need to be woven into the fabric of leadership. It's going to have to be something that is part of the leadership model that dictates the culture. That's the only way I see it going, because as separate initiatives, it's not ever going to fulfill on what is being requested now.
Yeah, it is. That's so true. And folks, also, we don't have time to get into this today, but just keep in mind also that mental health is health. And you may also have to be dealing with the Americans with Disabilities Act, workers' comp, you name it. There's FMLA. There's so many laws that intersect for healthcare needs, including mental health. And then depending on where you're located, your state, your specific state, or the state where the employee lives and or works may have its own law regarding a specific condition. And I'll just say like PTSD or anxiety or even depression. And so there's a lot for us to learn in HR and management to, make sure that we're doing the right thing. This has been awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. Appreciate it. Before we wrap up, are there any resources, books, courses that you'd recommend for our listeners diving into this topic?
I think it's important, if you have responsibility for other people, that you really do the self-awareness work, right? So you can be as regulated as possible, and that comes from self-awareness. So you can't ever go wrong in investing in your own level of self-awareness. That's only going to directly impact your leadership style. So I would just say, do the reflective work, look in the mirror, understand your triggers, understand how you relate to conflict, understand how your childhood influences how you look at conflict. Do you evade conflict? Do you come at conflict? These are all rooted in our own habits and tendencies and will directly influence your leadership style.
Thank you for that. And how can people connect with you?
Yes, my second home is LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Michelle E. Dickinson, or resilienceasalifestyle.com is my website.
Awesome. Hey, everybody, I hope this podcast has been beneficial to you and helpful to you. Take care, everyone, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.